Hello everyone, how are you doing? So today in this video we will be showing you how to transfer files between two end systems. And what motivated me to do this video was that I needed to transfer files between my two computers, and I found an easy, convenient way to do so, and I hope that it will help somebody out there. So we will be using the SFTP, and basically that stands for Secure File Transfer Protocol, and it includes the SSH, which stands for Secure Shell. So that just ensures that there is secure connection between our two computers or two end systems. And so we will also be using public and private keys to authenticate and secure our data. So before I go into the code, I would like to draw and explain out a little bit about networks and systems. So here we go. Okay, so let's say you have two computers. We're gonna make that a square. So you have computer number one, computer number two. Now, one computer is considered the server, and the other is considered the client. The server basically provides like a service to the other computer. That's why it's considered a server. And the client is requesting that service that the server has. So it can be requesting, like in this case, since we're doing SFTP, we're trying to request files to be sent over to the client. So we need a connection between these two end systems or these two computers. We need a secure connection, because if it's not secure, then there are hackers that can use a man in the middle of attack, which basically the hacker intercepts the data that's being transferred. So if the server was to send like a file over to the client, a hacker can intercept that message. So we need a secure connection. So that's why we use something called Secure Shell to do that. And we use public and private keys. So every computer has an address. We'll just say address 1. It's called an IP address, by the way. And this is what computers need to communicate with each other, to locate each other, essentially. And they also have these endpoints called sockets. So every computer has these sockets to allow data to be sent to the end systems. So the server is sending data from this socket to this client. And since we're using public and private keys, how the process will begin is that the server, which is sending the files over to the client, what it will do is the public key will encrypt the data, and then once the data is encrypted, it can be sent over in this channel to the client, and the client will receive that encrypted message, and it will decrypt that message, or it will decrypt those files that were sent over, and now it's accessible to the client. So now it has securely made its way over to the client without any attacks to intercept the message or reveal it. So we will be using this link, this website right here, to download FileZilla. And what you want to do is you want to click on download FileZilla client and click on download FileZilla client for whatever operating system you're using. Since we're using Windows, we'll choose a 64-bit one. And it looks like it's compatible for both 64-bit and 32-bit. So we just click on that and download. And it's downloading right there. So since we already downloaded it, we can go ahead and see what it looks like. We see what the application looks like. So this is what we'll be using to connect to our other computer. So the next thing you want to go on to is you want to go to this website. And this is where you'll be downloading OpenSSL. Now OpenSSL lets you create your public and private keys. So you want to, of course, if you choose the operating system you're using and choose Win64 OpenSSL v1.1.1k and choose the exe option and wait till it installs or downloads. Since we already have it installed, I would just go ahead and open up and show you guys what it looks like. So this is, you should get a command prompt. Again, Win64 OpenSSL command prompt. Click on that. We have two open, so let's just close out one. And this is what we'll be using to create our public and private keys. And we're going to be coding up a script, a Python script, to essentially establish a server and use this public and private keys. So here we go. So let's open up PyCharm IDE. And let's create a new project. Let's name it SFTP server. Create. Wait till it creates a virtual environment. We won't be using virtual environment because I know some people don't have it with their PyCharm. So let's create our script, and we will be using this script to start our server on this computer. Our SFTP server, that is. So let's just name this Python file. First of all, you right click, right click on the project name, and you go into the new tab and click on Python file. You type in a Python file name, so I just type in server as my class name, or file name, not class name. But yeah, so this is going to be our script for our SFTP server. So let's just start importing stuff. Let's import Paramico. And also I said we weren't using a virtual environment. Let's import sockets. Import sys. And these are just all libraries that we're going to be using in a couple of minutes. So let's also import SFTP server. Stub SFTP. and you will probably be asked to install these packages. You'll probably have like a warning that's not importing, so you'll probably have to install packages, and you can just use a terminal down here, and you just pip command these libraries that I am typing in just for your reference. So stub server, then stub SFTP server. And the host, like I said, this computer is going to be our server. So we're using this computer. So we'll just say localhost. And localhost is basically translated as the IP address. So if you want to go ahead and find your IP address, the way you do that is you click on this wireless icon right here, and whatever internet you're connected to. Well, I'm on Windows, by the way, so you just click on the wireless icon and you just go to properties and you scroll down, and you should see the IPv4 address. That is your IP address using the IPv4 protocol. So that's how you find your IP address. And we'll need that IP address for our other computer, which is our client. So the client can connect to the local this computer. So next we'll need to create a variable called key file, and this key file will hold our private key. So let's go ahead and create our private key. So if you have OpenSSL installed, you will have a Win64 OpenSSL command prompt. Just click on that. And this is the command you type in to generate a private key file. So OpenSSL gen RSA -des3 -out private.pem, and it's going to be 2048 bits, and you just click on enter. It's going to ask you a passphrase, so just type in anything. I'm going to type in 12345 as my passphrase. Have to verify it, so type in your passphrase again, and you generate your private key. Now you want to extract your public key, so the command to do that is OpenSSL RSA -n private.pem -out form PEM -PBUB out -out public.pem. It's going to ask you for the same passphrase you use for your private key. So I use 12345, and you have your public key. So you can find your private and your public key in your working directory, which is the directory you see on my screen. Probably be different because names are different, but to locate that, you would just go to your File Explorer and you would type in, or you go to the directory that you put it in, your working directory. So it's this working directory. So you see our private and our public key. So going back to the code, that will be the directory we're going to be using to access our private key. So I'm typing out the directory in which our private key is located. in the file itself and our password, which was, we said 12345, right? We'll be using this later, you'll see. So we're going to be setting up our sockets. So let's have a try except block. In which it will catch exceptions whenever we're having trouble setting up our socket or a server. So let's create a socket object called, let's call it server socket. I'll explain this as I go, as I type out. Let's use Sockstream. So basically this creates a socket object, and the first argument, socket.af_inet, that's basically saying that this socket is designated to IPv4 addresses. So it's looking for IPv4 addresses. And this second argument, socket.sockstream, is basically saying that this is a TCP connection. So a TCP connection, we need a TCP connection because we need reliable data transfer between our two computers when we're trying to transfer files. So next, we want to set the socket operation or option, So we set the socket option, and basically the first argument is saying that this is a level, and the level is the socket layer. So at this socket, we're using we are reusing the address, and we set that to true. So that is saying that yes, let's reuse the address, the local address. And since we're using FTP requires to reuse the same port number, that is. So we're reusing the same port number, and we're using the same local address at the sockets. So next, what we want to do is say server socket that bind the host to port 22. So that just says that our local host is binded at this port using this port number. And we want the socket to listen. So basically that just waits for a connection, or listens for another in system to connect to it, that wants to connect to it. And so we'll just print, say, listening for connection. And now we want to set up our host key, which will be used, which is our private key basically. So our server will be using this private key. As I said, private and public key are used to authenticate and secure our data that we're trying to transfer. So just type this out. We're using our key file, which we specified. This is a private key. So we're using that as the first argument. And the password is a password we specified for this private key, which we said was 12345. So this should be self-explanatory. Now let's create a loop. So we have our channel and our address. And we're going to use this method, which returns a tuple, and it's called accept. So the channel is basically the communication medium, and the address is whatever address that our server accepts. Remember, in order for two systems to communicate, they must know each other's addresses. And usually those addresses are translated by NAT. And I won't go into detail on that because that requires a little bit of networking systems, and that's a lot to go over. So yeah, moving on. So let's create a transport object. And we're going to be using this channel, which is the communication medium we'll be transferring our data over. And let's add the host key or the private key to the server. Next, let's set up our SFTP server. So just type this out. Stop SFT. So that's just setting up our SFTP server. And now let's start our server. Oh, excuse me. So we'll be starting our server. So let's have a print statement saying that server has been successfully started. And now if all this fails, let's just print out, let's have a print statement else. Listen to indicate that something has failed terribly wrong. Let's print out the exception message and let's exit. So that looks like it's pretty much all. We have everything set up. Again, this is an SFTP server on this computer that we're setting up. And it's using a private and public key to authenticate and secure our data that we're transferring from essentially this computer over to my other computer. And since it's a TCP connection, it's bidirectional, so this computer can send data and the other computer can send data. So now that everything is set up, I guess we can go ahead and just run it. So let's do that. See how it goes. It's saying bind takes exactly one argument. So what line number is that? Oh, right. So it takes one argument. It takes a tuple. So don't forget the opening and closing parentheses. Has no attribute RSA. I think we spelled something wrong. Oh, yeah, RSA key. See, we always make mistakes. Another, oh my goodness, another mistake. Oh, we spelled private wrong. Jesus. Oh my goodness. See, this is the disadvantages of being a programmer. You had to go through this, where you just have all sorts of errors. Failed. String object has no attribute. Read lines. And again, we forgot something. So that was the actual problem. We did not spell the method name right. So it's supposed to be from underscore private underscore key underscore file. And it should work. And there you have it. So our server is set up. And I'm going to open FileZilla on the other computer and connect it with this server, so we can transfer files between our computers. So if you're on FileZilla, you'll see that it asks for a host. You just type in SFTP / and then the IP address, which I showed you how to find. I'm not going to give out my IP address. So that's that. And then the port number is 22. So you click on Quick Connect. Let me just check that my IP address is right, because it's taking forever to connect. 0.1. Yeah, that's correct. It's just not connecting for some reason. Gotta love programming sometimes. Just gotta love it. Gotta love it. So what could be the mistake here? Okay, so when I typed in my actual IPv4 address of this computer, it worked. Originally, I had it as localhost for the host variable, but I changed it to my actual IPv4 address. So I will have to blur this so I don't get hacked. But yeah, once it finally worked for me on FileZilla, I did get to transfer my files over. So there could be a lot of improvements made to this code. You know, maybe we can have a command prompt in which the user can input like an IP address to connect to, or specify the current working directory. So as of right now, when we click on the top right corner and click on edit configurations, you see that our current working directory is this. So in FileZilla, when we connect the two computers, the client only has access to the current working directory. So you can try to change the current working directory to find other files that you may want to transfer over to the other computer. And so also some other improvements could be like we could probably ask the user to input a file to transfer over to the other computer. So that could also be another possibility. There are many improvements that could be made upon this project. So if you have any ideas that you want to share, please feel free to do so. Thank you guys for watching, and catch you guys later.